Alright, hi everybody. Thank you for joining me for chapter 19. So, without further ado, let's get into chapter 19. Chapter 19 says, Tanta T was very cheerful as she stood in my doorway the next morning. Did you sleep all right? She asked. She was wearing her I Love New York t shirt, this time with a long white skirt. Her hair was brushed back and tied in a tiny bun, resting like a porcupine on the back of her neck. Are you going somewhere? I asked. Ati speaks to city folks today, she said. Louise asked me to go with her to have her name put on the archives as having lived in this valley. My grandmother crept up behind her, gently brushing a broom across the cement. What's the use her getting registered? Asked my grandmother. She's leaving soon, no? Her name can be put on some piece of paper for future generations, said Tanta T. If people come and they want to know, they will know she lived here. People don't need their names on a piece of paper for that, said my grandmother. I will list my name too, Tanta T said. If a woman is worth remembering, said my grandmother, there is no need to have her name carved in letters. Louise hollered Tanta T's name from the road. That child has lungs like mountain echoes, said my grandmother. You have lungs like mountain echoes, she shouted from the house. Tanta T rushed out to the porch. My grandmother followed closely behind her. I watched through the window while Bridget moved her head in all directions, trying to figure out what all the commotion was about. Louise was standing in the middle of the road waiting for Tanta T. She had on a crisp lavender dress with a butterfly collar. Atty, you come now, she shouted, ignoring stares from the men on their way to the fields. Atty, can't the girl walk up to the house? Asked my grandmother. We're not a spectacle. You tell her to come to the house. She's frightening the leaves off the trees. Tanta T motioned for Louise to come. Louise dashed across the road and entered the yard. I walked out to the porch with Bridget. Louise ran up to play with her. I remember you, said Louise, grimacing. Bridget pursed her lips, trying to copy Louise's facial expressions. The broom fibers whistled as my grandmother furiously raked them in the dust. If a person is worth remembering, mumbled my grandmother, people will remember. It need not be cast in stone. We should go, said Tanta T, taking Louise's arm. My grandmother went on with her sweeping as Tanta T and Louise rushed down the road. My grandmother walked around the yard, collecting sticks and dry leaves. I let her hold Bridget while I walked across the road to throw some of Bridget's used diapers over the cliff. Later, I took my camera out of my suitcase and took a few pictures of my grandmother holding Bridget. They do scare me, those things, she said. The light in and out. The whole thing is suspect. Seems you can trap somebody's soul in there. I took a few more shots. Now, how many is that? She asked. Are you afraid that your grandmother will blend into thin air? I want Bridget to know you when she gets older, I said. I want her to know how much each of us is in her. Do you suppose she will have any recollection of today? Asked my grandmother. You can ask her yourself in a few years. If I live so long, she said. Now go on and put your daughter down. Let her rest a bit. I took Bridget inside and laid her down for a nap. While she slept, I looked through my wallet for some pictures that I had brought with me. There was one of Bridget, all shriveled up, a few hours after she was born. I almost refused to let Joseph take pictures of me with her. I was too ashamed of the stitches on my stomach and the flabs of fat all over my body. I looked at a small picture of Joseph and my wedding. The two of us were standing before a justice of the peace a month after we had eloped. I had spent 2 days in a hospital in Providence and 4 weeks with stitches between my legs. Joseph could never understand why I had done something so horrible to myself. I could not explain to him that it was like breaking manacles, an act of freedom. Even though it occurred weeks later, our wedding night was painful. It was like the tearing all over again. The ache and the soreness had still not disappeared. Joseph asked me several times if I really wanted to go through with it. He probably would have understood if I had said no. However, I felt it was my duty as a wife, something I owed to him. Know that he was the only person in the world watching over me. That first very painful time gave us the child. When Bridget and I woke up, I took her to the old rocker on the porch. Eliab was flying a kite in the yard. There were a few other colorful kites in the sky, but his was the closest to the ground. He shuffled around a lot, trying to maintain his balance and keep the kite in the air. He slowly released the thread, allowing his kite to venture closer to the clouds. Another kite swooped down like a vulture. There were pieces of glass and broken razors on the other kite's tail. One of the razors slashed his thread and sent Eliab's kite drifting aimlessly into the breeze. The kite drifted further and further out of sight. Finally, it dived down and disappeared, crashing like a lost parachute at an unknown distance. Eliab reined in his thread. He pulled it with all his might, tying it around the stick as it came to him. The thread suddenly seemed endless. He got tired of coiling, dropped the stick, broke down, and cried. Oh God, poor Eliab. Congratulations, you've made it to the end of another video. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe to my channel, like, share, give me a thumbs up. If there are any questions at all, please leave them in the comments section. All right, have a good day. Bye, see you soon.